Hey, everybody, this is Tom Gordon with the Outloud podcast. Today, we have a special guest, a registered nurse, young lady named Colleen. She's on the cutting edge of the COVID information cycle. She listens to it every single day on Sirius Satellite Radio. She sees it every single day. And she works at a hospital that's on a cutting edge of treatment. So we thought that this would be a good time after 9 months to actually, kind of get a state of the union on this deal. And it's the numbers are crazy, but let's hear what Colleen has to say. So thank you for coming, Colleen.
Hey, Colleen, thanks for coming. Colleen, what's the state of the level of anxiety and stuff that's going on right now? How you guys feeling right now?
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. We are in Southern California. Um, I personally work in LA County, and we are full at my hospital. Um, they put a tent up in the parking lot right outside of our ER today, um, for triage. I'm assuming. I don't work emergency room, so I don't know exactly. I didn't ask because I was busy with my patients. Um, but we have just on our floor alone, and I personally work women's health, so I don't really work in a COVID unit, but we see a lot of COVID patients. We are diagnosing COVID patients for the first time. They're hearing from us that they are positive. These are pregnant women. They've I don't want to say confiscated, but they've taken over half of our postpartum rooms. And half of those have been used for storage for the whole 10 years I've worked at this particular hospital. Um, and I've never seen a patient in these rooms, and they are all full. So that's ten extra beds, which doesn't sound like a lot to the average person, but it's a lot. Um, for them to find new storage for the 48 cribs that were in one room and move stuff out in order to put patients in is pretty surprising. Um,
Is that happening in all departments? Are they creating extra space?
they are. They are. They're boarding patient. We call it boarding when you don't have a place to put a patient, so you keep them in the emergency room. That's the patient's room now, is the emergency room. They emptied out our gift shop this week and turned it into a location to get oxygen supplies. You know, you need the oxygen and the tubing and the pulse oximeter. And so our gift shop has been closed for most of the pandemic because it's run by volunteers and we don't want anybody extra in house. And so they closed it today or this week. And I heard today that that's what they did was for oxygen supply distribution from that location. It happens to be right next to our pharmacy. While I was listening to the radio today, I heard someone talking about another LA County hospital that has emptied their gift shop to place beds in it.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter, Colleen. I was going to bring that up. I didn't know it was your place, but it sounds like it's your place and others.
It's not my putting patients in the gift shop is not my hospital, but
No, I know,
um patients in the gift shop, patients in the chapel. I mean, it's really bad. We don't have a place to put people. So, um like I don't know if Tom and I are married, by the way. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that or not. He was going to go on vacation to the desert to ride vehicles, and I was kind of like, I don't really think you should go because what if something happens? If you get an accident on the way there, if you get an accident there, um, there's no place for you to go for your normal everyday emergency because there's no room at the inn. It's bad. Um, and my hospital is a part of a chain, and we are not the worst one. We have been the highest number of COVID patients for the entirety of the pandemic until right now. There's another facility that's completely overwhelmed. It's
What's the criteria? What's the criteria, Colleen? What's the criteria at this point for admitting? Do you know?
needing a supplemental oxygen is really what they were going on before. Now, in this last couple of weeks, that might have changed to an extent to even worse than that. We're healthcare as in general, not just my facility, but healthcare providers in general are having to um, ration care at this point. Like, if there's not enough oxygen cylinders to go around, how do we send you home with an oxygen cylinder? We don't have one to give you. So previously, it was if you needed supplemental oxygen, if you needed to be monitored for your oxygenation, though that was the reason that we kept you. I am seeing in this last 2 weeks that change. You're going home with oxygen now. There's
What about fevers and stuff? That was a big thing back in the day. Was the fever? Is that not a part of this new version?
well, I think it's a huge combination of all kinds of things. Like, is it just a fever? And does Tylenol work? Does Tylenol and ibuprofen work? If those things don't work, then you might need something else. But um, at, if it works, then you can go home and take the Tylenol and the ibuprofen yourself. If it doesn't work, then we need to figure out why is it so high and what else we need to do to bring it down.
I saw a thing on Facebook that was getting reposted time and time again about COVID at home, COVID healthcare at home, speaking about trying not to lay on your back.
I just pulled it up. And I have the whole thing right here. But yeah, it talks about the two prescriptions that they're using, azithromycin and dexamethasone, dexamethasone. There you go. But it says that those are the two prescriptions that they're giving everybody, and as soon as they are.
Is that the same as a Z-Pack? The first one sounds like an antibiotic.
Azithromycin, it is, and they're giving it to some people and they're not giving it to other people. Like, I don't know what the magic send people home with is, but that is one that they have been doing a lot of. And yeah, we have always said don't give antibiotics for a virus, but I think that at this point we're trying to throw whatever we have. There are still, at 8 months in, there is no treatment. What we're doing is symptom management. There is no like, oh, we know if we give you this, you'll get better.
We don't hear much about the ventilators anymore.
People are still being put on ventilators, yeah. And one of the things that you're hearing a lot of is if you get to the point where you have to go on a ventilator, it's not a good deal. It's quite likely you won't come off a ventilator alive, and if you do, it's a miracle. I mean, it's not a good thing. Like, a lot of times people think that this stuff is commonplace and normal and it's a good thing. It to go on a ventilator is not a good thing. It means that you cannot breathe on your own, and without this assistance you will die. So we put you on a ventilator and you might die anyway. We might not have the ability to get you off of it. Your body may not be able to pick up and carry you when we try to wean you off of it. It's kind of.
What are we seeing in the lungs, Colleen? Is it so there's going to be mucus or there's going to be fluid or mucus in there? The ventilator is just going to make your lungs open and close. It's not really doing anything about the debris in there. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there's no way to get that out without coughing it up, which you can't really do on a ventilator. You can't cough.
They can send a suction down there. Now, this is not my area. I haven't done it since I was in nursing school, but they can. The problem with that is you stick this tube down there and you suction it all out and you pull that tube out and it brings all that funk out with it, all that mucus, all that COVID, and you are at that point what we call aerosolizing it. Yes, you're releasing it. And now the person that's caring for you, that's doing this for you, is basically basting themselves with it. And yes, we have all the stuff that we can wear, but when we're talking about stuff that's so small, it can get it's the mask is going to keep it out, but it's not that good. Masks are very, very good. The Mayo Clinic just did a study where they discovered that at 1.5 feet away, if you're both wearing masks, you can do that without passing COVID back and forth, which is fabulous. I think it's kind of bad that we've had to do that study to tell people that. I mean, doctors and nurses wear masks all day, every day sometimes.
So my mom, your mother-in-law, had COVID, and she told me this interesting thing, and I wanted to, hopefully you can connect some dots on this. She was sent a pulse oximeter to read how much oxygen is in her blood. I guess the thing you put on your finger. We've all probably had that every time we go to the hospital. And she said it gave her great relief. Like even though it wasn't a pain thing, it wasn't any kind of management. She said just knowing that she had 97 or 98% oxygen in her blood gave her massive relief because everyone thinks that they're going to suffocate to death. And that's how you're going to die, and you're going to have brain damage and irreparable. Even if you survive, there's going to be issues. And she said that, and I know those are, $15 on Amazon Prime and things like that. Is that something that's just a parlor trick, or is that something that is giving really good data to the people who would be at home, who are not being admitted, but having, like, I feel like if I was on a ventilator, I'm probably knocked out, right? I'm not fighting the war in my head. And if I'm sitting at home on my couch, I'm fighting the war in my head.
Absolutely. And then you're dealing with anxiety. Yeah, you're dealing with anxiety on top of difficulty breathing, and then the anxiety has you hyperventilating, and you're already hyperventilating.
Would you say that if you have the oxygen in your blood, regardless of the pain, because I think a lot of people are talking about body pain, regardless of most high level fevers, I'm assuming less than 104, maybe 103 and down, regardless of all of those things, if we still have the O2 in our blood, we're on the right program. That's the number one indicator where you should.
That is correct. That's so what they're seeing with some of these COVID patients at the hospital is oxygenations that are in the 80s or less than 80. They're in the 70s. You're hearing for me to hear that, it's like, oh my God.
I mean, are their lips blue, that kind of thing at that point?
Absolutely. And they're probably, like gasping for breath and may not even be able to make sense to you or me or anyone. When you don't have enough oxygen, you can't think coherently, so you're not making any sense. You're not making reasonable decisions. When you're in the 70s, your brain is starving for oxygen.
Like the fish out of the fishbowl.
Yeah, and you don't even need to be. Yeah, definitely fish out of the fishbowl. You don't even need to be in the 70s. That starts happening in the 80s. So it's not a pleasant. I have to tell you that, like, being a labor and delivery nurse, working women's health, like in all spectrums, I have seen 80s only a couple of times in my 25-year career. Like,
and that's all hands on deck at that point for labor and delivery.
It's all hands on deck for everything. You're not thriving in the 80s.
So people can lean on the pulse oximeter very much and keep track of their temperature. I know I have a friend, just so everybody knows, Chuck is not the friend I'm talking about, but Chuck contracted COVID. But another one of my friends was so petrified because he got such body aches and he got the shivers from whatever, I guess the
It's your body trying to regulate your temperature.
and he like felt like he was looking down the barrel of something. He's a very smart man, so his mind was playing tricks on him. And I told him about the pulse oximeter, and obviously by the time he got it, he was done with the fevers and stuff. But he said it was that bad. Like he thought, well, I've never had it this bad, so I can't even imagine what's next. So But that's a good thing we can lean on, pulse oximeter, keep keep track of your fever, right? Try to keep your fever down. What about jumping in the tub and all that stuff with the high fever? Is that
So, jumping in a tub is not necessarily a good idea. One of the problems that you run into when you drop someone's temperature is that you drop it so fast that they start shivering. And then when you start shivering, your body is actually going to get hotter. That's why it's shivering. It's small muscle movement and attempting to warm yourself up. So that old adage of putting a child in a bathtub to putting them in an ice bath, obviously, if your temperature is really super high and you're in the emergency room, they may pack you in ice. Um, they pack you in ice if you've got oxygenation loss to the brain in order to allow. We do it with babies all the time. And it really works. You starve the need of the brain for oxygen and you give it a chance to recover a bit. But as far as at home, ice baths are no good. Neither is cold baths. You have to have some kind of a thermometer, and they do have these cool little things that can float in the tub. But
like from the jacuzzi?
yeah, it actually is like that. But they have little things for your little kid, and you can start at like just below the temperature that they are and slowly trickle in colder water to slowly cool them down rather than rapidly cool them down. But you don't want to go like, okay, well, so you're 103, so I want to bring you down to 97.6 because then you'll be cooler than you should be. And that's not really a good idea. Yeah, you know, like if somebody's 103, bringing them down to 101 is a good goal to start with.
So when we're talking about temperature, obviously we don't want to cool them from the outside in, but obviously hydration is massive.
One of the things that I've heard a lot of talk about, and my doctor actually talked to me about, was not drinking cold things. Don't use ice. Don't drink cold things. Room temp or even warm, was a big deal. Lots of warm liquids.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure what the rationale with COVID is and not doing the cold stuff, but I have heard that before. And I don't know if it's because I don't know if it's a matter of creating the shivering again. I don't know if it's a matter of um, solidifying all those secretions, like when you know, slower than cold's not,
When I was in
kind of.
college, we had the Gatorade jugs, and they were room temperature. They were lukewarm. In the theory that they were telling, because I was bitter, I was like, I'm boiling hot. I need something cold, like the cold beer concept. And he says and the guy's a genius, Nesbitt, Chuck. He was the same train that you had.
My favorite guy in the whole world.
When you dump the cold water into your stomach restricts, and you're not getting the hydration at the rate that you would if it was relaxed.
Warm. That makes that seems quite logical. I don't know if that's, what that is, but that seems pretty logical.
And we'll say it again, this is not meant to replace any doctor's ideas or anything like that. We're just giving people food for thought. We want people to have some relief, especially mentally. We want to have maybe a plan of attack that would make you feel a little bit better, because it's going to be a little bit of a run where it's not going to feel good and you're going to feel scared. And
I kind of want to address again what you guys were saying about the thing you've seen online about what to do for COVID at home. There's some, I don't know, like I was, of course, trying to find the sources for some of that stuff. Because I'm like that, I want to know the source. I want to know if this is really the real thing before I start sharing stuff. Although I can just tell you intuitively as a nurse that stuff sounded really good. Things like, even though you feel awful and you're exhausted and you're weak and you're fatigued, not laying in bed all the time, getting up. I think it says like to get up every 2 to 4 hours, and I don't know. I have to read it.
Yeah, it says to get. Let's see. Well, it says don't lay on your back no matter what. No matter what, smashes your lungs and it'll allow fluid to set in. Set your clock every 2 hours while sleeping on your stomach. Then get out of bed and walk for 15 to 30 minutes, no matter how tired or weak that you are. Also, move your arms around frequently, helps open up your lungs. Breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. This will help build up your lungs, plus get rid of any of the pneumonia or other fluids that you may have.
I mean, those that sounds quite reasonable to me. Like I've said to people, like I said to you, Chuck, if you have an incentive spirometer, one of those things that they give you when you've had surgery, where you're taking a really deep breath and you're trying to float that stupid little thing in there. You're taking this really deep breath, like deeper than you think it's supposed.
Those are fantastic. Success and failure, you can see it right there in front of your eyes. You know,
Exactly. Well, not only that, but like I tell people all the time that my patients will say that have had surgery, I don't want to do it because it makes me cough. Yeah, that's the goal. Cough. You're gonna cough that crap out. So that's an excellent thing to do. So even if you don't have an incentive spirometer, just taking a deep breath, and then when you think you've taken a deep breath, you take it deeper than that, and then just let it go.
What are some of the things we can replace with? Can we blow up balloons? Can we blow the
It's actually the goal is not to blow out, it's to suck in. So you're filling your lungs as deep as you can. And when you think you've gone deep enough, go more. And then
and the average person will get a feeling of cough at that point. And just a perfectly normal, healthy, out of shape person would feel like they're going to cough at that point.
the instructions that I got were place my hands on my belly and try to breathe from my diaphragm, where I'm pulling the air down as far into my stomach as I can, and breathe in through your mouth until your fingers start to separate, so that you're actually making sure you're. It gave me a real, it gave me a ABC to it that made me go, okay, I know I'm doing it right, because I think I told you, Colleen, I wasn't coughing. And once, even when I was deep breathing and holding it and blowing it out, I wasn't coughing. So I was kind of felt good about that. But I was still concerned that I wasn't doing it right. So when I started to use that machine, I went, okay. And then I stopped using the little blow machine because I knew I could do that same thing without the machine, but it was still taking in the air as deep as I could.
that's like something that I tell my patients all the time is like if it's out of your reach, then it doesn't mean you don't do it. It means you do it a few times throughout the day so you remember exactly how deep that breath is. It's deep. And then you don't have to use the machine every time. You don't have to feel because honestly, it looks like the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen, and you're kind of like, I don't want to do this. This is dumb. I look stupid. Well, you're by yourself most of the time, and and so it doesn't matter. And then if it's out of reach, do the breath anyway. You're really, when we teach people to do incentive spirometers at the hospital, we tell them 10 times an hour. Sometimes I feel like, unless you've got somebody that's a by the book, by the rules kind of person, sometimes I feel like patients will 10 times a day and they think they're doing good. And it's like, oh my God, no.
It gave me great peace to know. Again, you gave me a number, and it gave me something, the ability to go, okay, I'm going to do that for, and to do it 10 times, and then I could just relax a little bit at night,
Yeah,
and then go back to it. But it really gave me some structure to feeling like I was
in
doing
power.
something. But it gave me great peace to know when you gave me a number, and it gave me something, the ability to go, okay, I'm going to do that for, and to do it 10 times, and then I could just relax a little bit and not, and then go back to it. But it really gave me some structure to feeling like I was doing something.
all
And
this talk about breathing? All I could say is namaste to both of you. I mean, namaste. Breathe from the. That's what they tell me in my yoga class. Breathe from your belly. Do not breathe from your lungs. That's so cool, man. And you just got done saying you felt peaceful. That just pumps me up. That connects all the dots for me. It's We got to get the Gaia subscription so we can do it at home on the TV, right?
Yeah, I talks about bananas, avocados, and asparagus, and it talks about potassium.
It's so there's a lot of people. If you have dietary restrictions and you're not supposed to be eating eggs, then don't eat eggs. Um, anything that you get from Facebook or a magazine or something like that, if you have restrictions given to you by your doctor, you shouldn't be doing it just because the magazine said so. What they're looking for is for you to have protein. So and one egg is, we all go to a restaurant and order eggs and they give you this half plate of eggs. A half plate of eggs is probably 6 eggs. One egg is about this big, it's smaller than the palm of your hand. So it's 3 bites and you're done. And so you've gotten quick, easy protein. Some of the other things that says about eating is like a banana, and I'll have you read it. A banana and
Yeah, it talks about bananas, avocados, and asparagus.
and they're looking they're looking for you to get potassium, which can help you to not have the muscle cramps and the body aches. So which you'll get that you'll get that also from like I think it also lists like Gatorade Zero and Powerade Zero and
Yep, Pedialyte, Gatorade Zero, Powerade Zero, and water with electrolytes to prevent you from becoming dehydrated. And it says don't drink anything cold, room temperature or warm it up, and water with lemon and a little honey, peppermint tea, apple cider, and that's just for fluids. No milk. It's yeah, but it also says let's see, no milk products or pork.
I'm not sure. I personally don't know what the pork rationale is, like why they're saying no pork. Milk products for sure. Milk builds phlegm. So cheeses, ice cream, cottage cheese, milk, like milkshakes, those things are going to create more phlegm and your body is
Now I really hate COVID. No ice cream? That's stupid. What's wrong?
I know. No ice cream. Are you kidding me? But they're trying to help you not build up additional phlegm when you don't need it. Um, as far as the drinks go, they're going to have some potassium in them too, which is good. One of the reasons they don't want you to drink the regular Gatorade and stuff is because it's kind of empty carbs. It'll give you carbs, but they're not the kind of carbs you really need. And then if you're already nauseated and don't want to eat, it's going to make it even worse. And so you don't want to go there. You want more solid stuff. It talks about berries and berry smoothies and stuff like that too. But again, you're going to want to do a berry smoothie with juice, not with ice cream or milk. It's not a
And it talks about peanut butter as well. A couple scoops of peanut butter. I don't. Is that protein again?
I because that's again protein and fats because our brains really need fat to function. A
Right.
lot of people think that, oh no, fat's bad. Fat's not necessarily bad. Healthy fats are good. We went through that whole thing in the 80s where everything was like, oh, don't eat anything with fat in it. Let's add sugar instead. and that didn't. Yes, exactly. And that was not really a healthy thing to do.
Yeah, fat for your brain is a big deal. Because I was paying attention about a year ago to that whole bulletproof coffee where you put the butter in your coffee, and I'm like, why would you do that? Oh, well, that's
Because it feeds your brain. It feeds your brain.
Well, and off the subject probably, but we went through a whole thing where everybody wants you back on butter now instead of the margarines. I don't understand that either.
The when you do what you have to do to make butter, I mean oils solid, they become unhealthy. And so again, this is one of those things where they say butterfat. We went through a whole thing: no eggs, no butter, and yeah, I hate egg whites. They don't really have the same kind of protein as the yolk does, but they have much less cholesterol if you need to watch your cholesterol. But
I think that's a real issue. I mean, I think my big question was, why is there not an app at this point? How come I can't go on my iPhone and treat myself a little bit and have sign, and I kind of know that maybe the leadership isn't the greatest right now, and that it's pretty hide your head in the sand kind of deal. But and I hopefully people are gleaning some of those tips from us where they can feel like they're doing something to help themselves. Um, I wanted to say, go ahead.
I tell you, one of the things that I think is happening is there's so many people in the medical community are so busy taking care of patients in the hospital. They don't have time to disseminate all of this and turn it into an app.
Let me ask you this. This is something I was thinking about. The ladies that are the teachers for the nurses at the colleges are usually, if not 100%, RNs. Is it all hands on deck? Are they being called in to be temporary or per diem type folks? Is it that kind of level, or
God, if we could get every nurse that's out there with a license to come in, we would be really happy. I know that in New York in the spring, they were pulling people out of retirement that were willing to come. It's a volunteer thing, like people were coming in from retirement, some of whom died later of COVID. Because we were that desperate. We're getting there now. I have not been to work a day since the last 2 weeks. We've been 5 to 6 nurses short every single shift. And it's, like, it's nuts.
so if there is a liability issue there, are the courts going to change because of the environment? It's like there's a battlefield medic that's not going to be held responsible for the things that should happen in the hospital because they're on the battlefield, and we just had to get this bleeding to stop, and you know what I mean? Like, I mean, is that going to happen? Because people are still going to sue people, but is it going to be, hey man, this was COVID, man. We were trying to.
It's kind of one of those things. I don't know they will hold you responsible at this point, but let me tell you, those of us that work here in California are a little scared of that. It's like, this is putting my license on the line. Like, you're asking me to do too much stuff.
Because Good Samaritan laws you do not qualify for that because you're.
No, because I'm licensed and I'm being paid by the hospital. This is not a Good Samaritan. A Good Samaritan is somebody that stops at the side of the road when you get in a car accident. That's a Good Samaritan. That would save us.
You give him CPR, crack the guy's ribs, you're not going to get in trouble for it.
Exactly. But there is question of that. Like, we're all so used to having to be so careful, especially in a very litigious state like California. We're not sure what will happen eventually. Even some of the stuff that, was happening in April and May is just now starting to come around to, and I'm talking about like workman's comp kind of things. Like, they're just starting to like be pulled around now. Like, okay, well, you should have been responsible for that as a medical facility. I don't know if it's going so far as down to the nurses right now. I'll say this is from mid-November. I heard something about the state of Texas being short 30,000 nurses. Well, how are you going to pull 30,000 nurses to one state when there are some states that probably don't have 30,000 nurses and everybody needs them right now? Like, we can't, they're opening up. Now, we didn't used to have these we haven't had them in decades, but they're opening back up where they're calling and asking nurses to come from out of the country to come in. They're looking for people.
Geez, that's ironic as heck. So you're telling me that immigration, the wall, and everything that the president,
all of that, and it's like out the window. Like, we need help. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, honestly, what?
What about the military? Are they gas?
Well, I was actually just
What about the military? Are they still talking about bringing in the military doctors and nurses?
listening to something today where they were talking about, because we could get into a whole nother thing when we were talking about vaccine and vaccine distribution and the current administration, and there has not been a COVID task force meeting since the 15th of November.
You think that would be a daily thing? 8 to 12 every day.
That's like 5 weeks ago. You know, the goal of this administration was to vaccinate 20,000 people by the end of the year. That's 2 days from now, and we've 20 million people,
20
and we've
million
only gotten to
people.
2 million.
Yeah.
Do you know if we go at this rate, how long it will take us to vaccinate the correct number of people in the United States?
About
Till 2050.
Yeah, I heard that today.
Yeah,
And
we're going way, way, way too slow.
the tweets coming out of the
And-
White House are that it's not his problem anymore. It's the individual states'
he's golfing.
responsibilities.
He's golfing. Okay, so I'm gonna get back on track. So one of the problems we are having is, just like we didn't follow any kind of a plan for testing, is there are vaccines. They are out there. They are being distributed. Now, how do you get them into arms? If you
And
don't know-
transport them, and that's
Well, where they're getting transported to places. The problem is that, say, Kansas, for example, like more than 25% of their public health staff have either retired, quit, resigned in the last 9 months. So now, since it's not a federal plan, it's a get them to the states and the states can handle it themselves. Well, what is that state supposed to do when they have lost 25% or more of their staff in public health? And not only that, but take this, for example. I was listening to somebody in public health from Kansas today. Can you tell? She was saying that the number of doses has changed, has changed so frequently that they can't make a plan. How do you make a plan when you don't know how many doses you're going to get? So if I get, every nurse at this facility to show up on this day, because this is the day we're going to give them to you, and then I don't have enough doses, or I don't have any doses because I gave the first set of doses out to someone else, it's very disorganized.
Seems like something that Bezos should be able to figure out. I mean, his ability to get packages to my house in 2 days would be the kind of logistics that we need for this particular situation. We know how many vaccines there are. We just don't know where they're at, right? Or we don't know when they're coming or where they're going to be.
Who's going to give the shot? Are you going to give the shot? You're not qualified to give the shot. I'm qualified to give the shot, but I'm at work at the hospital.
I'm pretty sure that if I'm qualified to not harass somebody sexually by some video at the beginning of the year, and I know how to drive a golf cart because of some video that I watched, or if I can fix my carburetor because I watch a YouTube video, I can go through the training to give an injection.
And I agree with you. You absolutely could. The thing is that, again, you asked that question about, will people be held responsible? So
let me ask you a question. What could go wrong?
If I have you, because what could go wrong? Oh my goodness. The simplest things, and people will blame someone else for it. So if I have you watch a video and you learn how to give an injection, and you give an injection to someone and they have what we call a vasovagal response, their blood vessels constrict and they pass out like that nurse in Tennessee, and then everybody says you're dead. Now, is it whose fault is it that you, and say she did fall down and hit her head, or say nothing happened to her, but she passed out, but the person giving the shot is now traumatized. Who's responsible now? It becomes a whole.
What kind of injection is it? Are we going into a vein, or just like regular shot in the muscle tissue?
In the muscle tissue. It's an intramuscular They're super easy to do. They really are. Like once you've learned how to do it, once you've been like, but this could be one of those things where do you ask all retired nurses or ask for some retired nurses to come do it?
I think the military is a good place to start.
I think the military would be a good place to start too. And I understand that there's supposed to be an announcement from the Pentagon tomorrow, possibly.
I mean, our son would be on that list. He's not active, but he's on the ready list. So he'd get his hippie hair out there and give some injections. I'm sure he would think that's pretty darn good.
I think that he would be willing to do that. Yeah.
And because I'm under the impression that you can set up a thing on Saturday and Sunday, and literally give all the injections for the week because they're not very many. You can give all the injections for the week on a Saturday and a Sunday. It wouldn't be 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. It would be okay. We got 20,000 of these things.
I think that's all true, but I think Colleen's point to begin with is what drives most of society today. We're a litigious society, and the liability. Who's going to sign off on the liability for all those things? You bring in federal troops to do that kind of work. There's liability that has to be signed off of, and I don't know all the details to that, but certainly bringing in lay people and trying to prep them. Again, somebody has to sign off on it. If worse came to worse, you and I both know I could give you a shot, Tom, and I wouldn't hesitate. I'd plug that thing in there and plunge it in, and we'd be good.
Yeah,
But
of course,
you know,
please,
of course, yeah.
right? EpiPen, the whole bit. I mean, people were doing that all the time. Mhm.
One of the really bad questions, or one of the concerning things, is why weren't we planning this and practicing and teaching starting in like June?
Well, we only have one nurse for 2,500 kids at our school. So if there was a bee sting, if there's a bunch of bees that come out and sting all those kids, she's not going to even be able to do the EpiPens. And so it's kind of a pretty silly deal. I mean, Chuck and I have been CPR certified for 30 years. Thank God we've never had to do CPR, but you know what I mean? I mean, you can do whatever, you can make whatever rule you want to make, but I think that if we want to get a little bit a little bit controversial, there's people that will refuse to get a shot. There's a lot of people that want it. You know what? I think I'll take my chances of, I'm not Chuck. Chuck, I pass out when they take my blood. So every time I do a PSA, I'm like, oh, it's ridiculous. I'm getting better at it. But the point is I'm in a position where I'm willing to be the guy to sign the waiver and say, you're an army medic, jam me. You're a retired nurse, let's go for it. You want to send it to me in Amazon Prime, and I do it to myself? I mean, how many guys did we see in the locker room inject steroids in the 80s, in the 70s? It's like that, to me. I think you just have to sign away your right to. I think that's what my question was. Are the courts going to change because of this incredible situation, Chuck? Are they going to?
But I think that's why we're so far behind, though. I think those things, like you said, Colleen, that we didn't start planning a long time ago because we just weren't sure about how fast it was going to come. And there was again, and I don't want to be political, although it's a political situation, that I think that there was just a lack of foresight into saying, well, of course we have to plan ahead. No, let's not worry about that now. Somebody was saying don't worry about it, because I can't imagine that smart people weren't saying let's start planning. Let's start putting together this program. Nah, don't worry about it. That's not what we're going to do right now. We need to get and again, somebody was dictating the fact that it was going to be a slower process. And now here we are with all these promises that were made about these numbers that you can't possibly keep up with it.
It could have been, if you planned ahead, it could have been done very easily. If it could have been done.
I'm under the impression that the funding got cut that was in place. I was under the impression that stuff started back with George W. Bush, the 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 task force for the whatever the catchable diseases. What's it called? There were
Well, we had a pandemic response playbook in place since or at least the plans to get it started were with W. I don't know like when it actually came
Obama
about.
had a speech about the fact that that was going to get us.
That Obama had a playbook ready to go and handed it over.
Because we had boots on the ground. We had people in China looking for these hot spots, right? And those guys are now since brought home. And
We're going down the rabbit hole, Tom. Let me ask you a couple questions, Colleen. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, I'll try and stay on topic.
No, I just one of the things that has been also talked about is loading up on doing a 3-day load of vitamin D3. And it talked a little bit about it. I don't know, sure the numbers aren't in front of me, but it was like for every 100 pounds there was 100,000 cc's of vitamin D that they wanted you to load for 3 days. And then the vitamin C, vitamin B, and the zinc, and then there was something that they offered that to make your body more susceptible to the zinc. Can you talk about any of those?
we should probably talk about prevention at this point. I think we've talked quite a bit about maintaining people's what happens when you get it, but what about not getting it? Is it as simple as a mask?
Not at this point. I don't think it's as simple as a mask. I think that originally, when had we all been wearing masks, um, back in April, I think it might have been as simple as masking and staying 6 feet apart and washing our hands. I think that it is so prevalent in society right now, in our society here in Southern California, and not just LA County, but Southern California. I think it is so prevalent that um, staying at home is really your best option, because
Hmm.
there. I know that when I go out to go to the market, I will be in contact with someone that is positive. I know that. There's just no way with the numbers that we're seeing. Um, because as full as the hospital is, remember, not everyone is being admitted because we don't have room. So those people are out in the public, and people are not staying home when they know that they are positive. Talk about litigation. I would like somebody to say, if somebody can prove that you gave it to them, and they can do it genetically, they can look at the genetics of it and tell you that. But people should be held responsible. They should not be out running around when they know that they're positive. I have to say, going to the doctor is one thing. Going to the pharmacy even is one thing if you absolutely have no one that can help you. But you shouldn't be out going to the Target to go shopping for a baby gift.
I heard a story from Los Angeles where a young lady who was a housekeeping lady who very very poor, very very meager, had a large group of people that she was responsible for, decided that she would be fired if she had the symptoms, and she decided that she was going to be fired if she didn't come into work, because that's the mentality of the people at the bottom, unfortunately, is that they're fearful of their job. there's no there was nobody telling her you will not lose your job, it's more important but you stay home and get healthy. So she came in, loaded herself up with Tylenol so that she can beat the screening process at the door, and then proceeded to do her job, I'm sure very, very well, but in the process infected frontline first responder healthcare people that are going to affect exponential amount of people just because of fear of losing her job and being in that situation. That's a whole nother story. These checks that are supposed to come. How is somebody going to live on $1,200 or whatever for 9 months? And the question is now, it's like, gee, does that lady, she becomes a super spreader. Does that lady is she held responsible, or is the administration responsible for the fear? Should there have been any doubt that she was going to lose her job? That's the worst part. She was afraid for her job. She was afraid to get evicted. She was afraid to put food on the kids' table. She's paycheck to paycheck. And so she's got to come in and absolutely destroy highly skilled people that are saving people's lives. She's actually
And just imagine if, say, she lives in a multi-family household or a multi-generational, and she's the only one working. So now she is responsible for all of the rent, all of the food, all of the everything. So she really doesn't want to lose her job, and also she doesn't have anything to fall back on as far as um um like sick leave or, pardon me.
she probably was in a union of some sort. I mean, that's the crazy part. Why I just the message is not getting. Part of this is messaging. I said that we needed to have it.
We're playing from behind. Everything has been we played from behind from the very start, and it's catch up. I,
From the very start, and we prom yeah.
I'll tell you, I can't even imagine that anybody could be any safer than I've been over the course of the last 8 months. I've been locked down and haven't had to go to work for such a long time because I work at a school, and we were off since April or March or whatever that was, and and I didn't go anywhere. I was quarantined
Yeah,
at home, and I have some underlying things that I wanted to make sure that I was being safe, and then I tested positive, and the only thing that I can tell you that I did was go to the supermarket,
ex-
and that's the only
yeah.
thing I did, and I can, and I was about to blame it on my roommate, who's a little more active than I have been, and he tested negative, and I tested positive, and so it hit people that were safe. It hit people that weren't safe. It didn't hit people that didn't care, and it's been a real, it's a modern day Noah's Ark kind of a deal. The flood, the massive flood. We're thinning the herd
Yeah, we are
as we
thinning the herd.
speak,
We
and
really are. We've lost 1% of our population here in the US. And 1% doesn't sound like that much, but it really is.
340 million. I'll take 1% of cash. $340 million.
Exactly. Yeah.
right.
Um
Yeah.
So I just want everybody to know we have about 9 minutes. We have a hard stop time. So Chuck, if you I know you have some questions and I talk too much, and if Colleen, obviously you're gonna have to have something to say at the very end probably, or something that's on your mind.
No, well, I think we're at a point now, I think we've talked through most of the things that affect us, and the things that we can do, and it's great to hear from a professional and how you feel. I guess my biggest question is how's morale? I mean, what's everybody doing I've met some people, and I've been in the hospital once during this time, where there were no visitors and there was nobody allowed in, and it was just the nurses, and they were. I don't know if they're like this all the time, and I just don't know. But they were the most unbelievably kind and caring people. But there was a serious shortage of thermometer covers and ice packs, and they actually came into my room at one point in my 6 day stay when I was in the hospital for 6 or 7 days or whatever it was, and they came in and they tried to take my temperature with a rubber glove over the
yeah,
thermometer.
that's not going to work cuz the machine knows.
And I about lost my mind, and I said absolutely not. Well, eventually there was um, the supervisor, I guess, heard that I pitched a little bit of a fit, and I wasn't even loud and obnoxious, but I was absolutely adamant that we weren't going to do it that way. And they said, well, we stopped ordering because they were coming from some foreign country, and they stopped ordering them, and that was their excuse. And so I kind of convoluted two things. The nurses and everybody were wonderful, over the top, kind and caring, but their lack of supplies and things early on in this pandemic. So what's everybody feeling like now? I mean, how are you guys all surviving and keeping a stiff
I
upper
have
lip
to
and stuff?
say that first off, I have to admit that I am not some in a department where patients are dying. I cannot even begin to imagine what it's like to see the death and destruction of this virus up close and personal, as far as patients actually dying. We have had patients that we have had to move from labor and delivery as soon as they deliver their baby to the ICU because they need assistance with their oxygenation and their breathing that we just cannot supply in our department. We are burnt out. We are exposing ourselves and in turn our family members every time we go to work. And people say, I keep hearing things or seeing it online where people say, well, that's what you chose. No, I did not choose to risk my life and my family's life. That is not the job that I signed up for. I signed up to help people, and I will do everything that I can to help people to the best of my ability and the supplies that I have. But you can't make things out of nothing. Like I read somewhere, someone was saying online that, well, they've had 9 months to plan. How come we don't have more beds and more rooms? Well, first of all, it costs $1 million to build a hospital room. You have to have that much in preparation to build each room. And even so, we need more nurses than you in 9 months. You can't even graduate a class of nurses. So where are they going to come from? Now,
Could you do a pulmonary rotation and put those boots on the ground? As CNAs? No, as a CN, like a bunch of CNAs, get them coached up in pulmonary and let's go.
let me tell you right now, hospitals are offering and demanding in some places that their regular floor nurses take crash courses in ICU because they don't have no more ICU nurses. There are places where the ratio of nurses to patients is being doubled and quadrupled because there aren't any nurses to go around. So when I say we are working 5 to 6 nurses short, I'm not saying that we are. Labor and delivery is really lucky. Our census per se has not fluctuated greatly. We're not seeing massive amounts of patients come in to have babies. And
I
still,
wonder if the stay-at-home thing is going to catch up to you guys. You'll have COVID babies in like maybe.
we are starting to hit the
Without
we're
a
starting to
doubt.
hit the 9 months from the beginning. So, but I'm not seeing, like, a majority of my patients are healthy people. We are seeing for sure more and more COVID patients. The first 4 months we were into this, we saw 4 patients, period. Now we're seeing more than 4 a day. This week while I was off, they had more COVID patients on the floor, more pregnant women that were positive for COVID than they had non-COVID patients.
Wow.
Like this is at the very beginning of this, the women that were in their pregnancy when this started were being super careful and not really going anywhere and not really doing anything because we didn't know what was going to happen. Now we're starting to see people that got pregnant in the midst of this. We're just starting to see them, or just barely pregnant when this all started. So,
There's no bloodborne possibility, right? I mean, there's no way a mom could give COVID to her baby that you've seen.
well, we have to have 2 questions there. Blood, if you're talking about crossing the placenta, I don't know what the most recent research is. We're seeing babies being born without COVID, but how are you going to care for your baby if you have COVID without passing it? Now, we did at my hospital, we did admit a baby back that was positive with COVID. Eventually it discharged and went home and was fine. But as far as I am aware, at my hospital, it wasn't an in utero transfer. I need to do some more research on that. That's not been kind of like a focus of so I could have a better answer.
Do you test the babies? Do you test the babies when they're born from COVID? No.
If the babies stay in the hospital for longer than 24 hours, I think is our current policy, then they swab the baby. And how awful is that? Like if you've been swabbed before, is
Yeah.
I was
It's
like,
it's
it's
a little ticklish, it's a little bit annoying, and then it's totally unbelievably something you can't describe. You can't.
yes, and that's that's really it's kind of like oh, and it's almost like after it's over, you're like oh, you know, and I have to go back to your original question real quick. Like we're getting burnt out. Like it's frustrating to see people out and not masked when we're doing everything. It's frustrating to have you tell me that and I knew how diligent you were being, for you to be so diligent and somebody got you sick, man. And it sucks. And I don't know why. Like you did everything. That's why I can't say that we can't say that everything is 100%, but I was trying to explain this to my sister just recently. We were talking about it, and she says, I don't understand how people are being really diligent and doing everything they're supposed to do, and they're doing everything right, and they still get sick. And I was trying to tell her, even at the hospital, us as professionals who understand contamination and cross contamination and the different ways that you can pass bacteria and germs and virus back and forth, we understand that all. We still have somebody watch us when we take our PPE on and off to make sure that you took your gloves off the right way. So if you touch the outside of your glove, now you've contaminated yourself. Well, sometimes you are doing it, you need out. You've been in there for however long and you're sweaty and gross and you just want to get the thing off of your head and the thing off your face, and you err the tiniest little bit. So people, we call them spotters, and the person will watch you take your stuff off.
Like a referee.
Yeah. Well, so you don't have a referee. You don't have that spotter, that referee at home to watch your every little move. Right. And you scratched at your nose, or you didn't wash your hands as you touched something climbing into the car, and then you touched it again, and then you touched your face because you finally took the mask off. Yeah. It's, if we have to have spotters in the hospital and we understand how this works, the average man, there's average woman, the average person is gonna make small mistakes that they didn't realize that they made. And it's not their fault. It's just that it's a lot. It's a lot. And we are getting burnt out by the fact that I feel like if everybody had been on board, if everybody had not been trying to be us versus them, if everybody had been on board at the beginning, this could be over already. And it's right now, guess what? In the next couple of weeks, it's going to get worse than it is right now. It's going to get worse.
I think that we're out of time, but I want to thank you, Coleen. We love you very much, and just so everyone knows, this is not Colleen's fashion statement. She just came back from doing a 12-hour shift, and we needed a guest, and she volunteered, and we appreciate it. I just want to say that if we can all sort of consider the default that there's no possible way that we can know the shoes that another person walks in, whether it's at a stoplight, whether it's at the supermarket, whether it's at our jobs, and just kindness has got to be our default move from now on. And if that kindness gets a mask on your body, if that kindness keeps your head level, and you can just blow some stuff off from time to time, it's okay. It's okay just to let some shit go sometimes, and you know what? We don't have to have all the answers. It sounds like we don't have all the answers on this, and if the only way we're going to get through it is to be civil. And this idea of highlighting Karens and highlighting, even having a word like Karen and we all know what that means, that's a shame. And, maybe things will change, at the first of the year, with, at least in that area, with some new leadership, possibly. And regardless of the financial implications that so-and-so did or so-and-so didn't do, at least there's going to be some emphasis in that area. And I hope that anybody listening isn't turning it off here, and anybody that's listening can just give it a shot. Just do the things that you think or somebody's telling you to do, and you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know. right? I don't know how they made Star Wars. I just enjoy it. I don't know how mass works. I just fucking do it. I don't know what 55 miles an hour, what the difference that is. I just drive 55. Put my seatbelt on.
And truth be told,
So
Tommy
peace
G.
and love, man. Peace and love.
Truth be told, Tommy G. If somebody's got an opinion that they want to share, they can come on here and they can say it out loud. So thank you so much, Coleen. Love you, and appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. That's awesome. So.
You're welcome. Love you guys.